Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the LFC Transfer Room. Myself, Lewis, and we're here for another episode of Expert Analysis. If you haven't checked out the last one with Steve Hoare from Redmen TV, go check it out, go give it a like, and please make sure to hit the subscribe button and make sure you tune in every single day, 7:30 p.m. UK time for the streams. Now, I'm joined today by one of the best up-and-coming Tottenham channels around, from what I can personally say I've seen. Really enjoy the content. It is Sonny Talks Spurs. If you haven't seen his content, I advise you to go check it out, even if you're not a Tottenham fan. Sonny, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Honestly, that was a really good intro. Being called up and coming is something I haven't been referred to that ever in my history of being on this planet. So, no, I appreciate that, mate. And I've been wanting to, jump on for a long time. We've been talking, haven't we? So, good to finally get a date in the calendar and do it.
Yeah, we've started following each other on Twitter. We discussed it a few months ago, but we finally got around to making it happen. Now, being the guest, I'll do the same thing with you as I did with all the other past guests on the show. I want to discuss your team because, of course, as it says in the title, you are a Spurs fan, you are a Tottenham fan. And Tottenham, to me, at the moment, are one of the most interesting teams to watch. I find myself sort of drawn to them, and I don't know what it is. How are you finding this season from a Tottenham perspective?
I think it's interesting and exciting because we've gone from one extreme to the other. We've gone from playing this counter-attacking. Well, we've gone from one extreme to the next again, because we had a Pochettino team which was dynamic, young, hungry, and so close. If it wasn't for your team and various other stuff in the Premier League, we could have achieved so much, but it just wasn't meant to be. Then we obviously went down the route of Jose Mourinho, Nuno Espirito Santo, and Antonio Conte. And they were a bit of false dawns, because the way I look back at it is, I understand why Daniel Levy appointed two of those managers, and you can probably guess the two I'm talking about, because we had a squad that should have been winning now. Tottenham had this trophy hoodoo over them because of, not just the fan base. I don't think it is. I think it's rival fans giving us stick that we haven't won anything since the League Cup. And obviously football is about winning trophies. So it is that situation where, I wasn't surprised it happened, but then it did go very sour. And, going from, I see like the way Tottenham fans are now. I went to a couple of games last season. I went to West Ham. I went to Arsenal, and it was a very toxic atmosphere amongst just the fan base in general. A lot of infighting. I saw people around where I sit with my mate, just arguing amongst each other. Lots of venom in the air, and I think it's just head, and that's all down to Ange Postecoglou. And Tottenham fans, I say that about trophies, but the minimum we demand, like most fans do, is to watch very attractive, fun attacking football. As a Tottenham fan, we have been graced with some of the best forwards in history. Gaza, Sheringham, Klinsmann, Bale, Keane, Defoe. Our list goes on. So that's what we expect. We expect, and I hate saying we expect, because in football, personally, I don't think you should. There's no divine right to anything, no matter what team you support. But you want to watch good attacking football. And we finally got that back in a manager who, I think about how Conte left the club in that Southampton game, and, what he was saying was quite true, but you don't say that about your employer when you're the manager, unless you have, ammo in the bank like a Sir Alex or a Pep or a Klopp or someone like that. But, Ange is completely respectful, but he can put his arm around a player, but he can also give them a firm word if they need it. He's improved a lot of that squad who were underperforming. I'm thinking, Dejan Kulusevski was on a knife's edge. He's looked a lot better. Basuma, Romero, and then he's brought in some players who have been exciting, like James Maddison, who today has been revealed is back from injury. Mickey van der Ven, Vicario, who has surprised me. So it's a good time to be a Tottenham fan. And we're going into games even like some of the losses this season, we were still positive. We know it's a vision. We know it's as as a Liverpool fan, it's been a project and you've reaped rewards. So hopefully we will as well.
And you mentioned players there. I mean, Richarlison's one who I think this season's come leaps and bounds from where he used to be. And when we I interviewed Flav Bateman a few weeks ago, and I asked him what's the most important thing that you wanted to see this season? And he said, I just want to see good football. Now, is clearly you're getting that. Clearly you've received that so far after the days of Mourinho and, like you mentioned, Conte and Nuno. Now that you know that you can play the exciting football, what is the target for the season? What is the I don't want to say like, because a lot of Tottenham fans, from what I understand, have come in with this expectation of, as long as we finish sort of top half, but we're playing good football, we don't mind. But now that you can see the development and the building blocks are starting to come into place, is there in your mind a sort of thing of, we could get top four, we could win a trophy? Like, what's the goal now?
Before the season started, I made some predictions with Harry Kane because we obviously had to take that into consideration. I thought, looking back now, the boldest prediction I would have said, we would have been in the title race with Harry Kane. And I'm not saying that as a reactionary thing, but you watch how we've created chances for Richarlison, who he has been good, but he still has missed chances. If you had Harry Kane in an Ange team, I dread to think what, some of the games we would have won instead and stuff like that, especially without Maddison through his injury. He could have dropped deep and been that creative spark as well. But before the season, I predicted sixth and good football, similar to Flav. I think I'd say most of the fan base would have said that. After the first 10 games, I would have said top four. Then we've had such a bad injury situation, which I don't think's been spoken about as much as the likes of Newcastle, Manchester United. So you do have to take that into consideration. We've had illness, we've had a sick bug, we've had hamstrings, ankles,
everything,
malaria. Even soon with malaria. AFCON. We've lost Son to the Asian Cup, we've lost Sarr to the AFCON as well, like Basuma. So it's been a proper up and down season, and the fact that we're still in and around the top 4, 5th spot, I'm very happy with. If I was to say what I'd like now, I would be extremely happy with 5th. I think playing in the Europa League is no shame. It's a competition that we have actually won twice, and it is Liverpool in it this year, and I assume you'd go all the way and win it. So it's a very respectable European trophy. But if we got top 4, it would just set such a marker that this Ange team is here to. It's not just here for show. It's not here to make up the numbers. We are playing the way he wants to, and we are getting results off the back of it as well. After a lot of people thought he might get sacked and wrote him off because the Scottish League's apparently not good enough. But trophy is an interesting thing because I don't know when this video is going live, but obviously we're facing Manchester City, which is going to be a tricky test, and everyone will be like, they've not scored at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and they've not won there in 5 games. But I'm a bit confident about it. I don't know why. I'm usually quite a glass half empty Spurs fan, but I'm optimistic about this. But I mean, the trophy would be nice, but I feel like top 4 is more likely than an FA Cup win.
I mean, when you played City, I think Pep underestimated what your side was capable of, in all honesty. I think he thought Ange was just going to create loads of space for himself and almost be his own worst enemy in a sense. But you really gave it to City, and that is one of the best games I've seen in a long time, that 3-3 draw from earlier on in the season. Now, I want to take it back because you mentioned some players there that went off with injury, and there's certain players in that squad who have really stepped up. Van der Ven's one, James Maddison's come in, and until his injury was arguably the best player in the league, signing of the summer. What can you see any further sort of business coming from Tottenham? I know you've signed a couple of players already, and there's talks around one player, which we will get into in a bit because I know your opinions on him are very strong. But can you see any more sort of business being done this January? And if it does, who are you going for?
This is an interesting question because surprisingly, when you look at what Tottenham have been able to do in less than a year, we've actually solved a lot of issues. You look at our whole back line now, including the goalkeeper. That's set for like 5 years. If even if you go back, 26-year-old goalkeeper, you've got defenders who are 25 and 22, 23, Mickey van der Ven is. Dragson's 21. Then you've got Dorrington and Phillips who are like 18 and between 18 and 20. And you've got Luka Vuskovic, who if people don't know, we've signed him from Hajduk Split, but he's 16, but he can't join until he's 18. So like that's future proofing in its finest. as for fullbacks, I mean, long term we could do with 2 more fullbacks who can play that position, but that's a summer job. If we're going off January, I mean, a lot of people will say, I mean, we're not going to sign a striker. That's something maybe to assess. You know, Timo Werner is an interesting stopgap, but it made sense because it's low risk, and if he does end up being good, you know, it's 17 million euros, which is absolutely nothing in this modern market. And we're not gonna, you know, even today this comes out, we're now the richest club in London. We're not going to put money down for a Tony or a Victor Osimhen. It's just not going to happen, is it?
No.
So that leaves the midfield, but I don't think anything's going to happen until we shift players. So, and when the January transfer window shuts, I'm planning on doing a massive keep, sell, loan Tottenham video, and you know, someone on that list is, I think, you know, Højbjerg has been okay this season. He stepped in, but long term he can't play. He can't play handball. He has to. He is a Mourinho, Conte destroyer type, and he just sadly doesn't fit our system because he's not comfortable on the ball. You know, doesn't really like to. You know, he can't play the 6, he can't play the 8. Whereas, you know, we need midfielders who can. So apart from that, it's knowing what midfielder what midfielder we can sign. But as I say, you know, Basuma, Sarr, you know, Bentancur's come back early from injury. There are players in and around. It's just knowing the timeframes and when they're going to come back from internationals and injuries. And, you know, is Ollie Skip a long-term player at Tottenham? I'm not so sure. So I don't think there's much going to happen, but I'm happy with the business we have done because Dragusin looks like a solid player. And to beat Bayern to the signing of him is...
Yeah. That's a big thing that you actually beat Bayern, because that shocked me. And then they get Eric Dyer. Getting Eric Dyer out as well was a big
It was
positive.
Like 4D chess. It was 4D chess play because I was sitting there seeing like who was it? It was Florian Plettenberg and Fabrizio basically saying it's up to the player now. And when I saw that, I was like, that's it, isn't it? Like, you know, Bayern. I'm a Tottenham fan, but if Bayern come to me with a, you know, contract offer and that, I am thinking about it. But obviously, he has more chance of maybe starting at us, and Bayern, he probably wasn't going to be 4th choice. So, you know, there are logics to it, but it just it shows, like, you know, a lot of these players when they've signed have mentioned the pull of Ange Postecoglou and the conversations they had. So there must be something going on at the club in a positive direction, hopefully.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the biggest thing I noticed then when you were explaining that, everything then was for the future. We're building for the future. It's a long term. Whereas it felt in the past under like Conte and Mourinho, and a little bit to Poch towards the end, to be fair, it just felt like we need immediate players. We need players who are going to come in and do really, really well straight away. But under Postecoglou, it just feels like there's a sense of we're preparing for a long term future with him. Is that correct? Or
I'd say so, because I mean, Tottenham fans might not like when I hear this, but all you got to do is look up the road at Arsenal to see what they've been building, and just know that, you know, I feel like for a squad to thrive, you do need you need some elder statesmen, and you need some young players who can thrive. And I feel like you look at the most successful squads in the Premier League: City, Liverpool, Arsenal. They've got that blend of everything, what I've just described there. And I think Tottenham are getting that. You know, you have a James Maddison who has been in the league for a while. You bring him in. You know, a statement signing of, like, you know, this is a player who was in the Premier League and was, you know, was amazing, but Tottenham have gone in and got him for a really good fee. And then you've got Son, who is arguably on his day one of the best wingers in the world, with both feet, finishing, dribbling, pace. And then you bring in, you know, 2 young fullbacks who are 23 and 21 who you're plucking out of thin air. You know, with not so much Poro, but Destiny Udogie was, you know, he was one of the best fullback. I think he was both voted best fullback in Serie A last year, but still people question him. You know, I questioned Vicario. I was like, who's this guy from Empoli? Like, never heard of him. In pre-season, he looked a bit shaky. I wanted David Raya. I've done many a video on my channel about that, saying how wrong I was, because he has been arguably the best keeper next to, I'd say, Alisson this season. Because Alisson is just like, he's amazing, and probably will go down as one of the best goalkeepers in Premier League history. So I think you do need that blend. But the thing is, I say, you know, a player like Son might not be at the club in a couple of years' time, but then it's not. And this would be an interesting point to hear from you. This is future proofing, whereas I think Liverpool have sort of not done that in the sense of the defense has been okay because you've sort of picked up players here and there like Kanate, but your front line and your midfield was a very much, oh God, what are we going to do? We've got to replace 3 players. We've got to replace, what are we going to do when this player goes? What are we going to do when this player goes? Sort of situation. So, I'd be interested to hear your answer on that as well.
I think from Liverpool, the midfield isn't too concerned because we've got like Harvey Elliott, 2021. He's looking really, really good at the moment. Curtis Jones is still quite young. The biggest concern at the moment is Bajcetic is young, but he's very injury prone. Endo is 31, I think going on 32 or something along those lines. So we are lacking a sort of out and out long-term number 6, so to speak. There are certain players in that team. I do agree that like when Salah goes, we're going to be hard pressed to find someone who can really fill that position because no one's going to be as good as Salah. It's like you said, Son leaves. Who's going to be as good as Son, really? Like, you're going to have to find a new way of playing. And we have a lot of young players coming through this team, like Connor Bradley, Kwanzaa, Ben Doak, McConnell's one. We've got a lot of young players who can fill that mantle. It's just getting them the opportunity to actually prove that they're capable. It took Joel Matip getting injured for Kwanzaa to really start getting a proper run in this team. It took Trent getting injured for Connor Bradley to really get a run in this team. Because we have so many players now in front of those to get into that position, it's difficult to gauge how good they'll be. And we've seen in the past, like Reece Williams came in because of injury. He just wasn't good enough. And there's been other examples in the past of players who just are not up to the standard, but you don't realise until it's too late. So we have a lot of players who can come in and really get a chance, but because of all the depth we've got, it can be a bit of a struggle at points.
That's interesting. I mean, because you think for, even like I think Nat Phillips, like these players came in and then it was sort of like, what do we do with them now? That like, but it's hard to displace Van Dijk. Matip has still been an interesting player, isn't he? Like he still feels like he could go on forever sometimes, even with his injuries. And then like James Milner was plugging gaps. Like it is interesting because especially now this way that Liverpool are, and I don't know if you're going to ask me these questions, but it's almost like it's a bit chaotic, but it's working. Yeah. So that's what I find quite interesting, to be fair.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you're right in that chaotic has been the word of the season. It's only now that we've really started to find a bit of solidity in the back line. I think the Bournemouth game and the Fulham match, because Van Dijk and Kanate have been at the top of their games, we've had a stable back line to build off of, which we haven't had all season because of injuries. Up front, I don't know who's playing where. I don't know who's going to start. I don't know if Nunez is going to be on the left or in the middle. I don't know who's on the bench. Because we have so many players who can play a magnitude of positions other than Salah, who's pretty dead set on right wing, it's unpredictable. And sometimes it's great. Like when Nunez gets going, I think he's very underrated. And I'm going to get your thoughts on him later on. Chaos is just the perfect word to describe it. But to me, that's Liverpool. That's how we've always played. We've had players in the past who epitomize. Suarez was one of the most chaotic players I've ever seen, but he got the job done. Fernando Torres was a graceful player, but he ran around the pitch with his heart on his sleeve. To me, the way we play now, it's chaos and carnage and all the above, but I can't think of a more perfect way for Klopp to get Liverpool to play, because that's who we are as a club. We play with passion, and sometimes it doesn't work, but that's the same with every football team. And I'd rather see my team go down on our sword than, like with your experience, like Conte and Mourinho, play that sort of drab football just to lose, but there's nothing to come away with it, if that makes any sense.
I think like you make the perfect point there. Like Ange Postecoglou's football at the moment is exactly the same. It's like we're going to play this high line, we're going to risk it all. But I've called it on my own channel, risk and reward football, because if it pays off, you're laughing. You bypass a press and you get into the midfield, and you've got your 2 fullbacks inverted, all going at a back line, whoever the team is, and you're like, happy days. But at the end of the day, you have to realise that, as I say, risk rewards. It could backfire, and you might concede goals. But yeah, I mean, even like your listing players there, I'd say Dirk Kuyt is in that category. Chaos, hungry. You know, all these players who were just like Steven Gerrard would just run these absolute socks off, box to box, and just So I think now I come to think of it, Liverpool and Chaos maybe seems to be a happy relationship.
It melds. I mean, I get very like sort of I go into like my own little rant tangent, and you mentioned there risk and reward. I think that's something that's it's something that Tottenham this season are really epitomising. Now, I want to go to one of your videos that you've posted quite recently. Actually, I think it might have only been a day or two ago. Conor Gallagher. I know your thoughts on him. Now, you in the video you said about the price tag. You said that there's other options we could go for. There's other players who could fill the role, and for the value of the player, it's not really worth the risk, so to speak. What is it in particular about Conor Gallagher that doesn't make you think he'd fit a Postecoglou system, which involves pressing and continuous running and box to box players? Would Conor Gallagher not fit it in that sense?
Well, that's a very good question, because that's what people seem to, say to me. But then I heard, I can't remember what I was listening to, someone talking about Conor Gallagher. Oh, that was it. I was listening to a TalkSport video, and a Chelsea fan rung up, and they were talking about Cole Palmer actually, but they mentioned Conor Gallagher as well. And the Chelsea fan on there says, he does run around, he does tackle, he gets booked a lot. I think Match of the Day did a piece as well where they were like, how valuable is Conor Gallagher to Chelsea? And I said to my Chelsea mate, I said, well, what about this? And he went, mate, he's winning the ball back because he's losing it in the first place. So he's like chasing his tail sort of thing. So I just think for the money you're going to pay for the player who happens, the problem is Tottenham are in a tricky situation because our English quota is, or British quota, I should say, is in a bit of a sticky situation. For example, Eric Dyer wasn't part of that because of his Portuguese roots, playing for Sporting Club de Portugal. There's a reason we've got we had like 5 goalkeepers because, well, Lloris didn't count, but we've got Alfie Whiteman and Ben Austin and Fraser Forster are all English, so they help. Brennan Johnson is Welsh, so that helps. Ben Davis is still around because of that. Ollie Skip, these are players who, apart from Brennan Johnson, a lot of those players probably could be moved on, but we do need them. Yeah. There's a reason Harry Winks was at the club for as long as he was. I just think, going back to Conor Gallagher, though, I think for the price, I still think, knowing the way that Tottenham are going with this stat-based signing outlook as well with Johan Lang, I feel like there are better players out there. I feel like we could get a potentially better deal for a player that doesn't have to be Conor Gallagher. Like, I still have like my doubts that will Chelsea deal with us even if it isn't the Roman Abramovich era. Chelsea, I don't know. I don't think the player wants to leave. I think he wants to stay at the club. He's captained them a lot this season. I think there's just too many question marks over it for me. And even in that midfield, to say our best midfield at the moment, I don't even know what that is, because I feel like we have so much choice there. We've got Basuma. We've got, we started the season with Basuma, Sarr, and Maddison. Kulusevski has shown he can also play in the Maddison role. And then you've got Bentancur, who can play in the 6 and the 8. We've still got Højbjerg at the club, but we have to move him on. Skip. I mean, to me, it sounds really, I think this would annoy a lot of Chelsea fans. I think Gallagher is slightly better than Skip. Like, there's nothing to me where I'm not sure if he's going to be as good enough in the progressive passing. And I don't know if he's defensive, because a lot of people have commented on my video saying he'd be like the Sarr role. I don't think he's defensively strong enough. I don't think he's strong enough. To me, he's like the opposite of a box-to-box midfielder. I don't think he's good in either box. He's not good defensively, and he's not good attacking. He's just sort of he's a midfielder, to say. And even I've got friends who are Crystal Palace fans, about 3 of them, and they said like thing is, as well, it seems to be an interesting conversation about Crystal Palace. Is not many people look at them and realise certain situations. Conor Gallagher, everyone was like, he was amazing. They say he fell off the second half of that season. He didn't score. He didn't really assist. He didn't offer much whatsoever. So it's really interesting to me. And I just know I keep mentioning price. I think 50 million. And I just don't know what you get for that sort of price tag.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think Conor Gallagher is a beneficiary of the fact that Chelsea are doing so poor. And because everyone around him looks bad, he stands out and shines. When in actuality, if you go back 3-4 seasons, Gallagher's on the fringes of leaving because everyone around him's too good. So I think he just stands out because everyone else is just looking so poor. And Tottenham, for me, I do agree. I think Sarr has well earned the right to be able to stay in that team. Bringing someone in like Gallagher just to fill the homegrown quota doesn't make a lot of sense. And I agree. I think in terms of pressing and movement, I think he's very good. But other than that, he doesn't offer a great deal. And I know I've heard Roy Jennings speaking about it. He's very passionate about Conor Gallagher at the moment. But I think that's just because there's not a lot of other options to invest the sort of passion in. He's a homegrown player who's been with the club for a long time. This, to me, just feels a bit more like Tottenham want to stick it to Chelsea by signing one of their boys. And, I might be off base with that, but, hey ho.
No, I think you're right.
Wrong.
I think you're right. And I think, like you mentioned Rory there, I think there is the part of, do they want to let another player go who could potentially go to that next level? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm saying all that in a negative about Conor Gallagher, but Ange probably could improve him and mould him into a better player than he currently is at Chelsea. And look at the players who have left there. Salah, even Lukaku. I know he went back and he was poor, but like left and was better. Kevin De Bruyne. There are. I think Chelsea fans, even though they've had so much success, they're still hurt by those certain transfers.
There's some that always slip through the cracks. And one player who you talked about, Postecoglou, improving players, I need to talk about Udogie because this season for us, left back, until recently when Gomez has stepped in, has been a problem because Robbo was a bit out of form. Tsimikas comes in and he looks good, but he's not, he doesn't stand out. Udogie, to me, is a Liverpool left back if I've ever seen one. He's so good going forward. He runs his heart out. He's so beneficial. He can cut. He goes inverted when he needs to. He goes out wide to the byline, creates chances and space. Can I get your thoughts on it? Because it feels like he's come out of nowhere and all of a sudden he's so talked about.
I just think he is, like a lot of these Tottenham players, proven a lot of people wrong. In the sense of, as I said earlier, like picked up as part of Paratici's, secret black book where he has all these transfer spiders in Italy. In an Udinese side, which wasn't pulling up trees, but again, which has been quite clever from Tottenham. Same with Sarr, we bought him and loaned him back because we might as well keep a player. Keep them on our books, but keep them growing if they're not in our plans just yet, keep them at their club, which is what we're looking to do with maybe Antonio Nusa at Club Brugge, which I think is quite clever. But Udogie, just as I said, a wing back playing full back. Everyone was like, I'm not sure about this, but he's so comfortable on the ball defensively. His tackling's really good, and apart from banned from a red card, which you're going to get them occasionally, and a couple of yellow cards which saw him banned as well. He's been impressive. It's weird with our fullbacks though, because 1 minute they're like in the 8, then they're 10s, like they're just up there, like getting involved with the play, and they just interlink with our wingers so nicely. And it's interesting you say perfect Liverpool fullback, because it does make you think that some of the players we now have our squad are back in the caliber that we had in the Pochettino days, like when we had Danny Rose and Carl Walker, two of the best fullback pair. Again, like we've got that again now in the league, in Porro and Udogie. But yeah, and to get him, he signed a new deal recently as well. I think that was good. That was more probably to do with what wage he was on. I don't think he was on a lot of money, so that was partly to do with that. But also, we signed up to like a Chelsea star 7-year contract or something silly. But yeah, phenomenal player. Just happy that a player like that is thriving in a league when there's nothing that in football I like nothing more than an underdog story or like
Yeah.
someone proving someone wrong. And I think him, along with most of that Tottenham squad, are doing that this season. You know, it might not come to anything. We might not win anything. We're not, but just to show that, you know, a lot of people write people off in football, but to show that this guy has come in and put his mark on a team so early and hopefully be part of this team for the future will be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned underdogs as well there. I think Postecoglou come into this season with a sort of a point to prove because he was like, everyone's coming into this thinking that I'm going to get sacked. I'm not going to be able to do a job. He's doing it and he's doing it exceptionally. So, I mean, people might say I'm being a bit biased with Tottenham here, but I think Tottenham have been absolutely incredible at points this season. Obviously, there's been defeats. You know, there's been West Ham. There's been matches where, you know, I think he went on that like 4-game losing streak or 5-game losing streak. But other than that, I think you play really exciting football, and it's one of the teams that I know are going to put on a good game. That Man United game a few weeks ago was superb. That was really enjoyable, and you know, it's a credit to Tottenham and how far they've come. Now, just before we move on to the Liverpool sort of side of things, I suppose, get your opinion on a few bits. I want you to. It's a bit of a. It's a strange question. It popped in my head before. Can you describe for me what the perfect Tottenham home trip would be? So you're choosing like what you do before the match, the opponent you're playing, the score line, and your goal scorers. So what would be like your perfect sort of trip to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium?
I'm trying to think of what game. See, I've been lucky enough the last couple of years. I'm not a season ticket holder, but luckily I've got a couple of friends who are. So when tickets become available, I go through them. And I've been to a couple of good games. Do you know what? I do like an FA. I do like a Saturday, like either 12:30 or 3 o'clock because you've got the rest of the evening if you win.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pick. See, 12:30 is risky because I shouldn't talk to a Liverpool fan about the 12:30 kickoff because it's not a good thing to. But I'll go with 3 o'clock because it's not on telly, so no one can wind you up about it. Who would you play though? That you can't pick a big team if you pick that. I'd say, mate, I'll go with an FA Cup game. I'll just because I've been to the last couple of FA Cups and it's quite like it's a bit like it is the definition of a day out. So I'd pick an FA Cup game at 3 o'clock. I'd get up there early and meet my mate. Usually we go in one of the pubs along the high road. I love every time I go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, or when I went to White Hart Lane. I go into Seven Sisters. I walk up the high road because I feel like that's part of it. Go to the number 8 pub, which is one of the well-known ones, right next to the stadium, and then go in, have a couple of drinks in there as well. And if we win, we end up at another pub called the Blue Coats. And ideal scorers, I always love when Son scores. I just love him to bits, and the fact that people call him Sonny makes me feel a bit special as well. I just feel like it's like when I was younger, like sometimes you go to places and everyone's got their like name tag, like the Jack and stuff like that. There was never a Sonny, so the fact that Sonny's a bit more mainstream now, I'm like, here we go, that's better. So Son. Bit of a tangent there. So Son would be perfect, and I would also take Richarlison. Richarlison's come back into my heart in recent weeks. I just think people do slag him off, but Tottenham fans and neutrals, but he does care, and he will run through a brick wall for you. So yeah, I'll take that. Just a 2-0 win. Don't want to get too.
No, not going to say like 10-0 against Arsenal. Not like that. Nice 2-0 in the FA Cup.
Yes, I'll go for that.
Right, we're going to move on then to it's a Liverpool channel, of course. So we're going to. I'd get crucified if I didn't mention a few Liverpool topics. And there's a few players that I sort of want to go over. I want to get your thoughts on just our season as a whole. I mean, from your perspective, and be as honest as you want. This isn't a sort of, it's a Liverpool channel, so you've got to cater. If you think we've been absolutely the pits at some point, feel free. What's been your perspective on Liverpool this season, looking in from the outside?
I'd say I've been surprised. I thought Liverpool. I say surprised. I thought Liverpool would finish third. I thought you'd bounce back, but I didn't think you'd be as this. See, I was going to say convincing. I don't think you have been fully convincing. But then when I look at the table, you've only lost one game, and that was against us, which was so unfortunate. And I don't want to bring that up because
No.
I have to. Because I saw a
mentioned it
Liverpool
to
fan.
Flav. He wasn't happy.
I saw a Liverpool fan the other day saying, "Oh, if it wasn't for this, we'd be unbeaten." And I'm sitting there like I don't know what you want me to say, but I did find it. I was happy when that Matic own goal went in because don't get me wrong, like I know it was a massive mistake, but you know I had my heart broken in the Champions League final when Sissoko handballed it off. So sometimes it swings and roundabouts.
Balanced out.
Yeah, but going back to this season, I'd say Mo Salah is always going to be incredible. He is a Premier League great already. Van Dijk has bounced back. I think that's been important. Kanate, I had this really good discussion. I think Kanate is as good as Saliba, but Saliba has better PR. I really think I really think Kanate is just like very underrated. I think he's rated actually, but like I feel like him and Saliba are doing very similar things. I think it's the French connection is while I'm comparing them. But I just sometimes I look at Saliba and then I look at Kanate. I'm like they're similar styles. Like they're quick, they're strong. They're young. So there is that. I think Trent has been phenomenal. The thing with Trent is I feel like Trent's at a crossroads though of what is he? Is he going to be this midfielder or does he stick at right back? Personally, I think keep him at right back. I feel like the defensive stick that he's hit with is quite. I feel like it's harsh now. I think people who compare him and Reece James and say Reece James is better, I think Trent is clear now. Really, I actually, you got to take injuries into consideration as well. And Trent is. I don't think Trent's been. I think has he been injured once this season? Was he out for a little while?
He's injured. He's injured now currently.
That's it. Yeah. So I mean, apart from that, I think he's been. He's played a lot of minutes for Liverpool. And apart from that, the thing is, your front line confuses me because I see a lot of criticism from him sometimes, but then Gakpo will pop up with a goal, or Nunez will pop up with a brace, or Jota will score against us like he always does. I think Szoboszlai is a good player. I think you've got a good player there. I feel like Liverpool just hit with sticks. I keep saying that. It's because he hasn't got the goal contributions that people are like, okay. And, I just feel like I'd be interested to see who you can get in that sixth row. I know you mentioned it. I think Endo and Gravenberch aren't the answer. McAllister, the thing is, when I watch football, like when someone goes, McAllister's had a good game, and I'm like, oh, has he? I'm like, it's not because I just haven't been watching him, and he's one of those players where he will just do stuff, and you just think it's part of it. So I think Liverpool as a whole they're bouncing back, but I think they're a little bit off. I don't think the title is yours this season. I feel like if you won it, it would be incredible considering. I mean, a lot of the talk on Talk today was, can you do a quadruple? I mean, it was spoken about before, but I think come the crunch time, you will prioritise certain things. I think FA Cup, you'll write off. Carabao Cup, I think you're going to win. And Europa League, I feel like you'll get quite away. You'll be able to handle that, if you get me.
Yeah. I actually saw Darren Bent talking on TalkSport, and he was saying that City's treble would be more impressive than if we won the quadruple, because it's not the actual quadruple, so to speak. But I mean, to an extent, yes, but at the same time, I'm not really too sure about that. But hey ho, it is what it is. I mean, no, I think you're spot on, and the consensus from everyone seems to be we've been good, but we're not at our best, and I think
that's sometimes the sign of champions, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's it perfectly. We can scrape past the result. I agree with we haven't looked convincing. I think the only games we've really looked convincing was we beat Villa 3-0 earlier in the season. The Bournemouth match, even then, we were still poor in the first half. And that's about it. There's not been a real convincing blow-me-away performance. West Ham in the Carabao Cup a few weeks ago, that was really good as well. But I just think, and what you said before about Saliba and Kanate, I completely agree. And I think, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Is it because Saliba compared to Gabriel, he stands out more. He's the better centre back. Whereas because Konate is next to Van Dijk and Van Dijk's the better player, Konate just doesn't look as good. He's compared to someone who's one of the best centre backs the league's ever seen. So by comparison, he's not going to stand out as much.
I think that's the problem you have with centre backs. It's a bit different to I mean, maybe the same with old fashioned striker duos, but one centre back is always, not necessarily better, but is seen as better. Like, you know, no matter the partnership, there is like because usually one tends to be the captain as well. So, Van Dijk will be better than Matip, or, it just seems to be, John Terry, Carvalho, Rio Ferdinand, Vidic, maybe slightly, but I feel like if you did a poll, I think more people would say Rio Ferdinand over Vidic. Or John Terry over Carvalho. It's just how it is. So that's probably what it is. Like, probably hit the nail on the head there. Saliba is the better centre back between him and Gabriel, and that as well. And then going back to Liverpool, actually, while you were talking now, I popped the Premier League table up because I was intrigued. I think the reason is I looked at the other teams just behind you, and including us, and we've all got 4 draws, whereas you've got 6 draws and 1 loss. And I feel like now in the Premier League, unless it is a top team like a City or and I think you have got a lot of your draws against Big Six opposition.
Yeah,
I feel like people still see a draw as like a bit of a loss sometimes, depending on how the game went. So, and also like on the score tally, 1 point is just, it's not going to get you as much as 3, obviously. So I think that's where people have been. That's probably where I'd say the Liverpool question marks are coming from, because it's almost like people are still looking at you as they do Arsenal and going, "Oh, you're top for now. You're not going to stay there." Which you never know. Like, I still think Liverpool are in more contention than Arsenal, but there's something about City, and you might agree with me. I think they're the best chasers in football history. Like, they love being 10 points behind. Whereas a lot of teams would rather be 10 points ahead. They love to chase down a lead, which is animalistic.
No, the City are, and I do a Twitter space with MJ, one of my friends, sorry. And he asked me the same thing, and I just said City they mentally beat you before anything. And he said, have you not got confidence in the season? And my response was, well, no, because twice in the past we've been beaten by 1 point. And one of those seasons, which was the 18-19 season, we were 7 points clear of City. They then beat us and just we drew 2 games. And for the rest of the season, every other game was a win, and we still lost the league. So I agree. I think City have that. For all people say, it's because Pep can buy the best players and, he can do this and that. To get your team playing that way and to go on such a winning streak, they're undeniably the best team in the Premier League. It is. And